Is it possible that the Bills are the best team in the NFL? Speaking of best, what's the best matchup for Buffalo in the playoffs? And what would be the worst? And what's it going to be like in Foxboro on Monday night? That's all coming up on the latest edition of the Buffalo Plus podcast.
All right, the AFC East champions, the Buffalo Bills. Welcome to the Buffalo Plus podcast. Mike Catalana, Dan Fetes, I'm Jenna Cottrell. Lot to talk about. The Bills coming off that dominant win over the Broncos. A lot of national media talking about this team. Mike, I mean, is this team one of the best in the NFL? I think the answer is easy.
Well, they're definitely one of the best. And right now, I think they're playing better than any team in the league. I watched Kansas City, and now it's a good New Orleans team that they beat, but New Orleans wasn't very good in that game. I watched Green Bay sort of slug their way through a game this past week. I mean, they're good. Obviously, they have Rodgers. I mean, there's some really good teams in the league, especially on the AFC side, but I don't think there's any question there is no one playing better than the Bills. What they don't have is the experience. They've never won a playoff game. This group's got a lot of young players coming from different places, so they don't have that. But in terms of the way they're playing right now, you want to go all cowherd on us and say they're the number one team in the league? Currently, the way they're playing in the regular season, I don't think anybody's playing better.
Well, I think it's interesting you talk about that, Mike, because you mentioned, those teams. You talk about the Chiefs. They're the defending Super Bowl champs. It's kind of one of those things, like, until you knock them off, they probably still have it. And you talk about the Packers again. But it's funny because, like, those two teams it's like they don't need to prove anything. Like, you talked about the experience. Like, the Bills, every week, they have to go in and prove that they are not some fluke, that this isn't just and obviously the NFL is a week-to-week league, and, like, you're only as good as your last game. But, like, the Bills have a smaller or a shorter resume than Aaron Rodgers and the Packers and, like, teams that have won for decades. So I think that's an interesting point, because if you were to just lay these teams out, if the Chiefs hadn't won the Super Bowl last year and all that stuff, you'd probably say the Bills are still the team to beat. Like, it's just you have that recency bias that, like, well, the Chiefs have done it and they have the Super Bowl MVP and the MVP. So
yeah, I feel like we've just seen them win in so many creative ways. But for the Bills, I think this actually plays to their advantage, because how much do they love to have the "we are the underdog" card? And looking
that's
at
going away.
What did you say? No, but I'm saying if you look at the big picture now of if you look at the big picture now, though, like, in those playoff situations, they are not going to be picked, because teams are going to say, well, like you said, the Chiefs have done it. They're coming off that run. You have Aaron Rodgers. They have the caliber, the pedigree. And I feel like the Bills, and maybe this is more so in their head, but they're going to play into that and say, hey, everyone's doubting us once again.
Well, the underdog role, whether the point spread says it or not, it's going to be interesting. I know we're going to talk about the matchups later, but when you look at what they can do, I look at this Bills team now, outside of the fumble by Andre Roberts last week. I mean, the special teams are usually pretty solid. They have a good kick returner. Their kicker's been really good. Their punter's been great.
That punter.
Okay, so set that aside. Their offense has been spectacular, just short, I would say, of the Chiefs, who are the most explosive team still in the league. And now the defense is coming around. So if you want to talk about the most complete team, I mean, they're right there with the Chiefs, I think. The Chiefs defense is pretty good too. It's not great, but it's sort of like the Bills. They can play well, they can make some plays, but the Bills right now are as complete a team, regular season team, as you're going to have in the league.
I think you can see glaring flaws with, I guess we'll get around to it more, but, like, looking around the rest of the AFC, Tennessee can't stop anybody. Now, they can score, but they can't stop anybody. And you look around, Cleveland has a lot of issues in their secondary. When they go up against teams that can throw the ball, they have trouble. So it is interesting. We'll get into more of those picks. But again, like you're talking about, if you're talking about all three phases, the Bills are one of the best, if not the best.
I saw this on Twitter, so I want to ask Mike, are the Bills peaking too early?
Yeah, I heard some people say that. I mean, it's almost Christmas. No, it's not too early, because, and it was interesting to hear McDermott talk and in this case, it was on Monday. To me, he sort of hinted at they're going to be careful with their players and get them ready. And I know they want to move up and everybody wants to be a higher seed. I think to me, it's more important to avoid the 4th seed than it is to get the 2nd seed, if that makes sense. You don't want that 4th seed. Not only if you win the first game, do you get Kansas City in Kansas City the next week, but it's Kansas City coming off a bye, which I think Andy Reid has been great off of buys, all those different reasons. So if they stay at 3, so be it. If they move up to 2, great. But I think that's what you want to avoid. So I sort of got that sense. So maybe they give some players time off. I don't know if Diggs is going to play on Monday. You know, he got banged up in the game. They're happy that he's not injured. They might just be nicked up a little bit, but I think you may see that from this team. But come on, we're at Christmas. There's 2 games left. It's not that big of a deal for them to possibly be without some players down the stretch and still maintain their position.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to look at because this year is so different with the playoff seeding and that top seed having the bye and that being the only bye now in the conference. Now, I know it makes a lot of sense, but let's get into also, like you mentioned, Stephon Diggs. There are multiple Pro Bowlers on this team this year. Dan, I mean, it's a pretty lengthy list.
Yeah, they have 5. It's the most they've had, Mike, since 1998 when they had 5. So and again, you look at them, and the only real one that you kind of say that's a little surprising is Tremaine Edmonds, just because I think fans and us in the media have been critical of him at times. Now, I know he was injured, but he's still, the middle linebacker of a defense of an 11-win team. I think that means something. And when Sean McDermott talks about it on Monday, saying that, like, there probably will be guys that won't get in that deserve it. And I thought that was interesting. And he said, obviously I'm biased, and he was open and honest about that, which I like to hear because he's like, obviously I know how hard these guys work. I guess I just thought Tremaine, this isn't to say he hasn't played good. I just don't think he's played to that level where we thought he would take off at an all-pro level.
All right, so let's just say what it is. I said this coming into this year. I said he made the Pro Bowl. He'll earn it this year.
Yes.
I don't think he earned it this year. I don't think he was that player, but he made it last year. If he wouldn't have made it last year, he wouldn't have made it this year. That's the way that Pro Bowl vote works. And a lot of times you'll see the Pro Bowl voting comes a year later, unless a guy has a special year like Allen is having or Diggs in his new place. I mean, those guys were obvious. Both of those guys are legitimate all-pro consideration too. So no, Edmonds did not deserve to make the Pro Bowl, I don't believe. Jordan Poyer did.
Yeah.
Jordan Poyer's been, I think he's been, Trey White is Trey White, and they avoid him. Poyer's in the middle of everything. They bring him up on the line. He's coming on the blitz. He's made plays in the secondary. He's a great tackler. He plays special teams. I don't know what else you want to ask the guy. And by the way, he's a better safety than Jamal Adams. So then I'll get that back in there again.
And he's listening to these podcasts, and he's going to compliment you the next time that he sees you, Mike.
Yes,
so he appreciates that.
That's what I want. And Jamal Adams made it in the NFC as a pass rushing linebacker. They list him as a safety. He's very effective in that. But in terms of
one of the worst defenses in NFL history, I just want to throw that out there. We've mentioned that before, how bad Seattle's defense is. Like, again, Mike, but that's what you talk about. Because you've made it before, it's almost like you have to be so bad or injured not to make it again.
Yeah, and in this case, I think it does come a lot of times a year after. Offensive line is that way. I thought about that with the Bills, and I don't think they have a dominant offensive line. But I got to tell you, our buddy Deion Dawkins could have gotten some consideration because you've got one of the best offenses in the league. And yes, well, maybe, he had missed a few games early and he's not known as, but Deion's the left tackle on one of the best offenses in the entire NFL. And the quarterback and the wide receiver made it. I know a lot of times offensive linemen seem to make it based on a strong running game. It just seems that way. It seems to fit more in that narrative. The game has changed a lot. That's what they ask the left tackle to do, man. Protect the quarterback, get out on some other plays. I think Deion's, if you're going to pick somebody, I think he'd be a good choice. They go to the Super Bowl this year. I'll tell you guys right now, Deion makes it next year.
Okay.
Well, I'll go off that. Who makes it next year that isn't a Pro Bowler this year? Jenna, you go first.
Ooh, okay, wait, you're putting me on the spot. Gabe Davis.
Wow.
Ooh, hot
I would go with Gabe Davis. I just think in his rookie year, with everything that's happened, he's had so much poise and maturity. And seeing the way he interacts with Stephon Diggs, I feel like that is just so immensely helpful to him. And I expect him to take a big step forward next year. I thought he's already had a great season as a rookie, but having another year in the league, yeah, I have high expectations.
By the way, can I say something else they should do?
No.
Take fullback off the Pro Bowl, okay, and put slot receiver in the Pro Bowl. Because a slot receiver has almost no chance to make it as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Right.
But look at the year Cole Beasley's having. And you're going to put a fullback or, okay, Dan, I know you're close to these people, but long snappers making the Pro Bowl. I mean,
so
come on.
disrespectful. You are so disrespectful.
They should just
people too. Long snappers are people too.
Make it an additional. Sorry, Reed. Make it an additional spot. But what I'm saying is, because of the way they do the position, sometimes it's like, seriously, like Cole Beasley has no chance. Look at the wide receivers who are going to make it. Yeah. I mean, you have to be elite level to make it in that spot. So that's just the only thing. Well, that's why I say Dion makes it. Dion's the guy. Okay.
Corey Bajorquez.
Oh,
punters are people too. How about that?
He just doesn't punt enough. See, the Bills offense has got to slow down next year, and then the punter can make the Pro Bowl. How's that? Hey, how about
Bojo? He's got to make it next year.
And
right,
while
if
we're
you
on
had
that,
another pick, Dan, who would it be?
It's tough.
Right?
I'll say Poyer. I guess Poyer's the one. I guess that's we'll say that Poyer or Hyde. And one of them deserves it. And probably it's because statistically, this isn't a top 10 defense. I think that's probably why maybe they don't get looked at.
Yeah. And I will say this. I am fully aware that the Pro Bowl is a lot of times on reputation and a popularity contest.
Yes.
Right. It's been that way. Yeah. But I mean, you look, most of those players are pretty good. It's some of those positions that are a little harder to judge that aren't as statistic based. Because I know the players, when they vote, they do know the numbers. If some guy out of the blue has 8 interceptions in a year, he's going to the Pro Bowl. Yeah. That's the way it's going to happen. Because it's usually that kind of thing where it's like, where did this guy come from? It's hard for an offensive lineman to get that. That's usually based on how well the team does.
But I feel like Dion has enough notoriety. And if the Bills offense can continue to be as efficient as they are, then that would definitely bode well for him.
I got to say this because he's a friend of mine who was on the Bills for a long time. But my buddy Ruben Brown made the Pro Bowl a lot of years. The story is that Ruben would throw a good party at the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, and he kept getting voted back. He was also a heck of a player, and he's a good guy. And he kept getting voted back. And I think, I got to look, I think Ruben made it like 8 times. Made tremendous amount of Pro Bowls. And he was a really good player for the Bills. But
it's funny, Mike, because you talk about that too. Like when Lorenzo Alexander made it as linebacker, it was because he had like double digits in sacks. Like it came out of nowhere.
Right.
And it was interesting because last year, Jordan Phillips was the one that got snubbed. Nobody had more sacks out of the linemen besides Aaron Donald. And I thought that he was the one that got snubbed. Now, Jordan got paid and he's out in Arizona doing his thing. But if we're talking about, obviously we mentioned the 5 guys that did make the Pro Bowl. And, obviously Poyer seems to be the one snub. It's worth bringing up. I said it on our newscast or sportscast, was just that, Jerry Hughes probably has a little bit to say about, now that he's got a touchdown and he's had a couple of strip sacks and, he's got 4.5 sacks and just, you almost thought he would get the cumulative award of the Bills being this good and Jerry being the long-term guy. It's kind of like when Cal Ripken and Derek Jeter would get into the All-Star game in the MLB. It was just like they deserved it because of all that they've done.
Yeah. Can I add one other element to this that is actually makes a difference is there is no game this year, so no one will opt out. And that's how some guys end up on the Pro Bowl because there's a reason for a player to opt out.
Terod.
Yes. Yeah. Like he made it when 11 other quarterbacks opted out of the Pro Bowl. I'm sorry. That's mean. Jenna, I can't believe you said that.
It's the holiday season, Michael.
Sorry. I apologize. No, I mean, we all like Terod, but he wasn't a Pro Bowl quarterback. But he made the Pro Bowl. But this year, nobody's opting out. Even the guys in the Super Bowl, they don't have any reason to opt out because there's no game.
Good point, Mike. That's a good point.
Other guys aren't going to get in like a guy like Jerry could have in other times. We don't know exactly where the alternates are, but there's a lot of Pro Bowl talk. But I'm telling you, this team is going to earn those votes by playing well in the playoffs and getting those votes next year.
All right.
And the moral of the story is Reuben Brown threw one hell of a party.
That was the story. I never went to the Pro Bowl.
Takeaway.
Never got invited, but Reuben's a good guy. I believe he would have had a good party.
All right, to do some pontificating then, All-Pro. Who do we think, Mike? We'll start with you.
I think Trey White still has a really good chance to do it again because I don't think Gilmore's going to make it this year with all of his injuries.
Mm-hmm.
The All-Pro team's very different.
Yeah,
it's voted on. It's more about what you did that year. It's tough to make. But I am trumpeting Stephon Diggs because no Bills wide receiver has ever made first-team All-Pro.
Crazy.
But you go back, Jenna, I was looking back in that time, they only picked 2 wide receivers. Okay. In effect, they picked 1 because Jerry Rice made it every year.
Yeah.
And then you had guys like Michael Irvin making it back when Andre Rison. I mean, there was some great players. Andre Reed was as productive as a receiver as there was, but he never made it. But he got the gold jacket and he's in the Hall of Fame. So that tells you how great he was. But I think Diggs this year with Hopkins should be 2 of them and Tyreek Hill. That, to me, if I'm picking my 3, I would have those 3 guys.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. No complaint. It's Diggs.
The only thing Diggs doesn't have is the touchdowns. He only has 5.
Which is interesting because, I mean, Tyreek Hill has 14, 15? Like 14, those other guys have quite a bit and Diggs only has 5. Yeah. But still, you look at leads the league in catches. He's close up there with yards. Yeah. All right, let's go to the playoff seedings.
Yeah.
And how important this year is considering only one team gets the bye. The Bills want to be home for as long as possible. They obviously already locked up that first game at home after winning the division. Dan, I mean, the AFC is going to be tough.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Mike. I disagree with you after hearing kind of the sense of Sean McDermott, just of whether or not they're going to rest guys. And again, it's just our assuming of what they would do. I just don't think this is a veteran enough team to pull back on the reins and then let them go again.
Oh, I agree with that. I don't think it's pull back on the reins. I mean, it's like Stephon Diggs isn't 100%. He's not going to play.
That's fine. Yeah,
it's not just rest the guy for the sake of sitting him out.
Correct. Yeah. And I guess you always go back and I go, they're not chasing a perfect season, but they could be chasing 13 wins and what that would mean in all of those sense. And obviously trying to get that 2 seed, and to get 2 possible home playoff games and everything like that. I just think that this is a team that is rolling and I don't know that you mess up too much. I agree with you, Mike. I agree that if Stephon Diggs is it seems like he's escaped a serious injury. Sean McDermott said today, it doesn't seem like it's worrisome, the reports that he's getting. Yeah. But I just don't know if that you pull Josh Allen at halftime. I don't know if that's happening. See that.
No, I don't think that's happening. I'll tell you a game, and it helps the Bills to be playing on Monday night. Watch that Tennessee Green Bay game next week. Ooh, because if the Titans were to win that game, okay, now they are right there with the Bills. They would be a half a game back until the Bills play. The reason I say that is the Titans are a team. If they were to win their last 2 and the Bills drop either game, the Bills and the Titans would be tied. And if it's a 2-team matchup, the Titans get that. And now the Bills drop to 4. I mean, this is provided the Steelers don't fall. So if you're following me here, it would be the Steelers stay 2 and the Bills would be 3 or 4. You don't want to go losing a game to Miami or lose it because if you're the 4 seed, I don't think it really matters. You won't even know the matchups until week 17 because Indy and Tennessee and Cleveland, they're all so tight. Yeah. And one, could easily go from being a team could easily be like Tennessee could be the 3rd seed or 7.
Yeah. Well, I feel like too, like the Steelers, they have a tough schedule. They end out with the Browns. Like that game could be very influential in terms of seeding.
Of seeding and where everybody is. I just don't think you want to go to 4. If you go to 4, because then your second playoff game would be against the Chiefs in Kansas City and coming over. Go ahead.
I don't think that the Chiefs are going to make the AFC Championship game. That's a blistering hot take.
Well, if that would be the
I'll
case,
take that.
that would mean they would lose their first playoff game. But that could be, look at the teams. It could be Tennessee they're playing. Like, we don't know who's going to win.
Yeah.
And that would also mean, man, it would be good to be the 2 or the 3 seed, because then you'd be, if you're the 2 seed and you win, you're home for the AFC Championship. So, Dan, you're not going with that blistering hot take?
Nah, I just think that, like, they're one of those rare teams that I just think I think they can flip a switch. And like I said,
Look at that.
He
froze in the middle of his hot take.
He's got a cold take, apparently. No, but Mike, hear me out. I get it. They're coming off the bye, but I feel like while the Chiefs can flip a switch, I feel like they're playing with fire quite a bit. Like, I know they're so talented, but sometimes I feel like, look, I know they're probably going to be a one-loss this season type of team heading into the playoffs, but I just feel like you're playing with fire, always just relying like, oh, we got this. Like, at some point that well is going to go dry.
I just don't know.
Maybe not consistently, but just at one point it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think, when we saw them last year in the playoffs, they did that multiple times, right? Where multiple times they came in and were behind, and then the next thing you know, they flipped that switch. I mean, I will say they flirted with disaster, even into the Super Bowl, like they did.
Yeah.
And I thought, they might have been a more consistent team last year, even though they keep winning. What if they won, Dan? Haven't they won 6 straight games within 6 points? I'm asking the gambler here. Kansas City.
Yeah.
They keep winning these games.
They are close. And like, I get that they have a switch, but again, I just feel like that well has to run dry at some point.
That's just not a bet I would want to take. Yeah, it's just not a bet I would want to take, Jenna.
I mean, again, hot take alert, but that's how I feel. In my soul, that's how I feel. It could be wrong. We'll see.
All right, so let's talk about then. Let's talk about the matchups. The best and the worst, right?
Yeah. I mean, where do you want to start, Dan?
I think it's a couple of the matchups that you don't want to face, and there are 2 teams to me that really stick out of 2 teams that worry me. Now, this isn't saying that the Bills can't beat all of these teams. As we have said earlier in this podcast, they could probably play, or they can play with anybody. Cleveland scares me.
Yeah.
From the sake of their offense and their confidence of their offense. We know the Bills' one weakness probably has been their defense. And 2 is Indy. And that's just because I think they're maybe like the Bills, maybe not as explosive on offense, but better on defense than the Bills are probably overall throughout the whole season. Again, the Bills are maybe playing a little bit better defense, but that is a mean defense that can pin their ears back. And if they get ahead of you, that's trouble.
Yeah, that's good. 2 good teams to point to, Dan. And I think they are fundamentally very different teams.
Yes.
Cleveland doesn't play defense.
No.
Indy is very fundamentally sound, great tackling team. They do all those things right. They're well coached.
Veteran quarterback.
Now,
very veteran.
Now, less explosive offense.
Yep.
And it's an interesting mix. I mean, Reich, when he was with the Eagles, he helped them get there. But this is as head coach now trying to get it going. It's sort of new for Cleveland, even though Baker's been there the few years. It's new for them, new head coach. I don't think there'd be a ton of pressure on them coming in. And I think Dan's making the point, and I'm going to say, and I bet you he would agree with me, I'm not talking about a team that I think is going to the Super Bowl. I'm talking about teams that could beat the Bills in a single game.
Yeah, one game.
And that's what you worry about,
And both Cleveland and Indy, again, not something sexy that you talk about, dominant offensive lines.
Yeah.
Both very, very good offensive lines. And that if Baker can sit back there and have time to throw, he's really good this year. And when you talk about Phillip Rivers, again, that may be the best offensive line in football in Indy. And they can run the ball just like Cleveland. And those are just matchups where, Mike, you talk about getting behind.
Yeah.
Those would be tough teams to try and chase down. And I know that, Mike, you can take away the other teams that you may not be as worried about. But I just think that I wouldn't be as worried. And I know the Bills would probably be a 3-point favorite, I would imagine, over Indy, probably a 5-point favorite against Cleveland if I'm just spitballing off the top of my head.
Right.
but I would rather, I just wouldn't want to face those teams necessarily. It's not to say that I think the Bills would lose. They would make me worry more.
Hey, look, I'm naturally skeptical of all these matchups. As good as the Bills are, by the time it's done, the Bills might have the, you don't know, the second best record, the fourth best record.
We thought Denver was going to be a close game, and look at that.
And they blew them out. But at the same time, you worry about the Ravens because they're a physical team. They haven't won a playoff game, and this year the pressure is not on them. Yeah. They're going to be a low seed. The pressure it's a different kind of pressure this year. Last year was the MVP. This year that team was out of it, and now they're back in it, and they've gotten back to what Lamar – again, I don't see that team going to the Super Bowl, but I think a lot of teams are worried about playing the Ravens right now. They're a physical team. Their defense is banged up. They're a physical team. And then the other one is the Titans. Yeah. Look at how well the Titans played in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And now their defense stinks, but their offense has scored 44 times, including once against the Bills. And they've got Derrick Henry. And so there is a reason to worry about all these teams. I think the best matchup they could get is Miami. Okay. Josh kills Miami. If they get Miami in the playoffs somehow, I think the Bills would handle Miami.
I think that Baltimore is the one game that the Bills would not have the pressure on them, Mike. And maybe Cleveland, they'd probably have more pressure. Baltimore they have this monkey on their back.
Yes, because they haven't won a playoff
winning this playoff game, and the last year they've lost. You've had the MVP, and like I said, and everybody wants to talk about Lamar's regression and all this and that. You talk about the Bills needing to win a playoff game. Baltimore needs to win a playoff game, or they're going to be Cincinnati. Like that's the road that they're going down of being a really good team that just can't win a game.
I don't disagree with you. I just think it's almost like Baltimore had already failed, and now they're getting a bit of a reprieve. Yeah, and they're going to come in.
I think that's how it works. I agree. I don't think the pressure gets let off you because you continue to lose.
Well, when they fell apart earlier this season, though, I feel like people were like, oh, they're not going to make the playoffs, like whatever. And then they kind of rallied around that, and they have been playing better. And yes, while they haven't won a playoff game yet, I feel like them being in the hunt, they're going to be happy to be there as opposed to like they have all this pressure. The narrative is going to be, yes, they haven't won a playoff game, but hey, they got here. When in the middle of the season a couple weeks ago, you were like, are they going to actually even make it?
Yeah, you know what? When Jenna's making that point very forcefully, it really works, other than the Christmas tree behind her, which
it looks so nice.
Sort of changes everything.
There's so many great ornaments.
Did you make a lot of those?
I made one of them.
Is it real or fake?
It's real.
And by the way, the ones you made, does your mom hide them in the back of the tree?
They're front and center, just like me. No.
All right. So I said I think Miami. I mean, look, we're trying to say that I think Dan thinks Baltimore's the best matchup. I think Miami, just because I just think they're the least complete team at the moment. They don't scare me on the outside. They're not a great running team. They have a really good defense, but I think the Bills would beat them in the play. Look, I think they're going to win their first playoff game. It's not like I'm saying they're not going to win. But I'm starting to look at these teams and going, okay, like there is no dog, and I mean dog in a bad sense, not a good one. There is no dog in the AFC playoffs this year.
Yeah, I think Miami, Mike, I agree with you there. I wouldn't be afraid of Baltimore just because I think that the Bills can outscore them. And then again, another team that as I'm sitting here is going like Cleveland can do a lot of good things. I just think the Bills can win a shootout with them. Even if Nick Chubb runs for 200 yards, I just think the Bills can put up 40 on Cleveland's defense. So those three teams I wouldn't be afraid of, and I would hope the Bills would play in that first game.
By the way, I'll just say this right now. To Jenna's point about Kansas City getting knocked off. So Cleveland wins their first playoff game. Say it's against Pittsburgh, like whatever it is. And then they're up 24-0 on Kansas City and lose the game 58-24. That would be a very, with the team the Browns have, I could see both up 24 and down 30. Yeah. In the playoffs.
The Chiefs losing on a Hail Mary. That's what I'm picturing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just going full in.
What about the Chiefs losing on like a Andy Reid misusing clock management?
Well, that's why Patrick Mahomes has been so amazing for him, because even with the mismanages, it doesn't matter. Patrick Mahomes can make it work. No, I mean, we talk about, how tough it's going to be in the AFC. Now the Bills heading to New England. It's going to be a primetime game. I mean, you want to talk about a tale of two different seasons. This Patriots team missing out on the playoffs for the first time in 11 years. I mean, look, the Bills winning the AFC East title. Like, the Patriots got run all over these last couple of weeks. I mean, it is poetic justice. Like, I don't know how to describe it because I'm sure Bills fans are just so looking forward to going in there on Monday and being a team that's capable of having a sweep this season.
Yeah. Well, let's just make it very simple. It's just reverse of what it's been for many of the last 20 years.
Yes.
Where the one team is dead, quarterback issues, roster issues, all those things going on, already eliminated. And the other team is just deciding if they're going to rest any players, getting ready for the playoffs as division champ, except it's flipped. Now, I will say this. Bills fans enjoy it to the moment, but relax a little bit on dancing at the grave of the Patriots. You got them this year. They're a bad team this year. You're winning. And we don't know when they'll recover, but you are talking about a franchise that won 17 division titles and 6 Super Bowls. So the Bills won the AFC East. That's great, but it's still a long way between, you got this year and this moment to brag about how good your team is. And that's great. But what the Patriots accomplished, now I'm glad it's in hindsight and hopefully it never comes back, is just disgustingly impressive over the last 2 decades.
But Mike or Jenna kind of says like two teams that, different seasons or different stories this season. This isn't like, wow, what a bad break for New England's had this year. Like, this is like New England has been outside in a lightning storm with a metal rod over their head for years. And Tom Brady's been like the rubber suit that's protected them. And like, this is a team that has drafted
with this.
I'm just saying,
okay?
I'm just saying, like we even saw last year, this is a bad New England team. It's a bad roster.
So it's really funny you say that because I was going back just looking through some of my stuff and I was at the New England game last year late in the season and I was in front of the camera saying, this is this is a Patriots team that's led by their defense. Are we seeing the decline of Tom Brady? Like all of this stuff. And it's like now a year removed, it's like, wow, this team looks very much of like a different group.
They've let offensive linemen go that protected Tom Brady. The offensive line crumbled. Their skill position players haven't panned out, whether it was Antonio Brown and Edelman getting injured.
Yeah.
They've swung and missed on tight ends. They've swung and missed on wide receivers. The defense had kind of held them together, but you have your defensive coordinator poached and all of these things. Like, this wasn't just like 1 year where like they've had a ton of injuries and things have gone bad. Tom Brady kept a bad roster afloat and covered up a lot of flaws. Like, I don't see this as, well, they're going to fix this real quick. And again,
I'd say real quick, it might take him a couple of years. As long as Belichick wants to stay there, he had a bunch of guys opt out. You watch them now he'll be all in on changing that roster. All I would say is the only reason I said about don't dance on their grave is because the Bills still haven't won anything yet.
Yeah.
They should be proud of the division title. But seriously, I mean, in Foxboro, you're going to be proud of a division title. They don't even.
But those are different worlds.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's what he's saying, though.
That's what I'm saying is now go to the Super Bowl, go win the Super Bowl. That's why I said when you look back on this AFC East title, if it's by a team that went to the Super Bowl or won it, then it's just the prize on the way to the championship. You win the AFC East title and get knocked off in the first game, and then it becomes an empty division championship. So that's all I'm saying. But look, enjoy the fact that the Patriots stink this year. And I'm actually stunned they won, 6 games to this point? They weren't even
31 other teams passed on Cam Newton.
Yes.
Well,
they will have a new quarterback next year.
Going into this game, the Bills are 6.5-point favorites as of the recording of this podcast on Monday night. It could definitely go up. Obviously, now with Stephon Gilmore getting surgery, he is out, not going to play in that game. Their secondary stinks, and I don't think, how do the Bills not run up the score and try to put a 50 burger on them?
They might. They might certainly be able to, though. I mean, New England's defense still played pretty well against Miami in that game. I know that's not the same offense as the Bills. Like I said, go ahead and run. I mean, New England's done. I mean, they're not going anywhere. I would say what's really interesting.
They're not done in the Bills' eyes. Like it's been 20 years of Scott Farkas like beating up that kid in like the little snowsuit on A Christmas Story. Like it is time now to take their head and put it in the toilet and flush it a couple times.
Except it just doesn't mean as much right now. You already beat them once.
You beat them again. It doesn't mean much. It's New England and the Buffalo.
But New England's, they're not good this year. So you beat them. It's only bad if you lose to them. Yes, and you get the sweep. Bills, that's great.
But the Bills weren't good for years, and Tom Brady still kicked them, and then kicked them, and then let them get up and ran his car over.
Super Bowl.
Right, because they had gone on and won Super Bowls, and they were already great. I'm saying is, if this ends up being that season for the Bills, then all this stuff is great. You beat them up and then don't do anything. I will tell you this. The 22 guys who start the game for the Bills on Sunday or on Monday, I tell you what, if you really went through the rosters, man, I wouldn't be surprised if you wouldn't say 20. I'm just off the top of my head. 19 Bills would start for the Patriots. I mean, it's really a mismatch of rosters right now. They had a bunch of guys opt out. Yes,
that's what I'm saying. Like, even when the Patriots were, got bounced in the first round by Baltimore, and Tom Brady went 10 years, and the Patriots went 10 years without a Super Bowl. Like, it still was them kicking the ever-living snot out of Buffalo, and that was what it was.
But they had already won 3 Super Bowls and gone to 5. That's what I'm telling you is they have all that cachet. Like the worst thing you could say about the Patriots over the last decade, other than they cheat, is that they lost the Super Bowl. As much as we all, despise the evil empire in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they've had a bad year.
But games like that like the Sunday night game where the Patriots and Tom Brady and Randy Moss put up 48 in Buffalo, like it's still talked about. Like you have a chance. Josh Allen has a chance. Like if I'm him, I want 6 touchdowns. And like, I want to say like, it is officially over. Like we beat you guys by 3 points in our house. We are now coming in. I know you're a wounded dog and I'm going to be the one that puts you out. Like I just don't see how that doesn't mean anything.
The only game like this that I really remember when New England did this late in the year and the Bills were already out was the year the Bills beat them 31-0 in the first game. And then Belichick beat them 31-0 in the end of the year. And then Greg Williams got fired and the Patriots went on to win the Super Bowl. Usually by this time, the only way the Bills beat the Patriots was when they would rest Brady and they played Garoppolo. Like that's the thing. So yes, you're right. Most of the time when they came in and embarrassed the Bills, it was still in like the middle of the season, where the Bills were still legitimately alive and they would, or even when the Bills got off to a good start and they would pound them. So yes, go beat them up, score a bunch of points. But
the ultimate revenge is a Super Bowl.
Yes. Go win the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Really
have fun. Like enjoy what
Hold on. Dan's got one more. What do you got?
No, I'm just saying like the Bills can't win 5 Super Bowls this year. Like you can't. So like the first step is embarrassing them because that's what New England did to Buffalo. So if you can take that step on Sunday, or Monday night, do it and do it in a big way. Like
it would have been better if it was like the game to eliminate them from any chance of the playoffs.
Absolutely. Miami stole that from you.
Miami stole that from it. It would have been nice. You should
be extra angry and you should be the one that just wants to, score 30, 30 points in a quarter. Like test yourself how good you can be.
I completely agree. Why can't you have both?
You can. I'm just saying.
Okay, I feel like we're arguing 2 sides of the coin. That's why.
They should have lost to New England the first time.
Yeah, Justin Zimmer.
Your boy, Justin Zimmer, made the play.
My boy.
Hey, by the way, do we know who's going to start at quarterback for New England? He's going to start Cam again.
Fraser said they're preparing for Cam Newton. So
yeah, I think Cam's going to start because I don't think think Stidham. I don't think Stidham's going to be around, and I think out of respect to Cam, they'll just keep him out there. Let him play.
What do you do if you Cam after this season?
I think he'll still end up on a roster somewhere next year. He's not going to be a starter.
You can't wear clothes like that.
Bingo, Jenna.
You
stole the words right out of my mouth.
You can't wear hats like
have
that
your
and be a backup. You can't.
As a backup, it's tough as a backup. Yeah, you gotta be
you
harder.
can't.
Yes.
It's too bad.
I can't believe 31 other teams might pass on him next year.
That tweet is so good. Bookmark that one. All right. Make sure to check out more Buffalo Plus content. Check it out on buffaloplus.com. If you are on the YouTube page, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you like, it definitely helps our work get out there. Subscribe as well. We have over 2,000 subscribers.
Oh yeah,
2.4. 2 point something.
Jenna, everybody wants to know, is your mom aware of where the game is Monday, and is she going to tell
She
you?
would probably text me. Folks, I've had my mom text me to tell me that the Bills won, and I'm at the Bills game. So,
like we've talked about our wives saying something, and I said the Bills had won the division, and my wife after the game on Saturday said, "Well, what does that mean for the Patriots?" That's just what she's known as long as I've covered the team. And then I was like, "Oh man, if Bills Mafia could hear you say that, like in a true, genuine tone of like, well, what happened with the Patriots this year?" It was like, "Oh, sit down for a little bit. We got to talk about a story."
That's a tweet. That is a tweet. Thanks so much for following along. For Mike, Dan, I am Jenna. Again, buffaloplus.com on the YouTube page. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. Thanks for watching.